Greetings friends and welcome to this week's tactics video. Today we're going to talk about the Imperial Agents, the Deathwatch. We're going to talk about how you can put a kill team into your Blood Angels army and if that is something that you should be thinking about. Obviously if you do buy Deathwatch, sometimes those Deathwatch were in chapters, you can actually customize them pretty coolly. So is the Deathwatch kill team worth picking up for Blood Angels? How could we use them in a list? Let's dive straight into this week's tactics video. So the goals for this week's video are pretty simple. We're going to discuss how you could include the Deathwatch kill team in your Blood Angels list, and we'll talk about the rules that you require to adhere to if you want to do that. We're then going to evaluate some of the best characters that could attach to that kill team to give them a little bit more killing power. And then finally we're going to compare their damage to some of the strongest Blood Angels picks, like the notorious Blood Angels captain. We know we all love him. So here he is. Right. So assigned agents. This is the army rule for Imperial Agents. If your faction is Agents of Imperium, which it won't be, it's going to be Blood Angels. So you come down here and it says if your faction is not Agents of the Imperium, but every model in your army has the Imperium keyword, then you can include Agents of the Imperium units from your army even though they do not have the faction keyword. In the select army faction step, in this case, the maximum number of Agents of Imperium units you can include in your army depends on the battle size. So most of the time we're playing 2,000 points. I mean, you can play 1,000 points if you want, but you can include a couple of Retoon units, a couple of character units, and one requisitioned unit. And note, you can include Agents of the Imperium dedicated transport units in this army as normal. So basically, if you take... Remember, transports must start the battle with units inside them. So I guess if you were taking like a Retoon unit, I'm not really sure how you say that, but you could take a transport for them. So that's probably what we're going to be looking at today. Let's start with a kill team. Now, on paper, there's a lot of rules for the kill team, right? There's loads of weapon options. And I guess the main thing that the kill teams do will be if you are not fighting Imperium or Chaos. You will be able to reroll all hits. Otherwise, you're rerolling hits of 1. So all the time, you're rerolling hits of 1. If you're fighting not Imperium or Chaos, you're rerolling all hits. So this actually gives the kill team like quite an increase in their base level of damage output. So yes, they're going to have less attacks than Blood Angels, typically, but you are going to probably be rerolling a good number of times, and the rerolls work in both shooting and in melee combat. So you could build a unit that's got a little bit of shooting, a little bit of melee, and basically for 100 points you're going to get 5 Deathwatch veterans is what they're called now. It is a Deathwatch Kill Team is the name of the squad, but the box, if you want to buy this box from Games Workshop, is called a Deathwatch Veteran box. And we're going to go into the weapon options in a minute, but they got the standard like battle line grenades. You can see here, this is one of these Retoony. How the frick do you say this? Whatever. But this is one of these Retoon units. I think that's how we were going to say it. And some of these guys can take storm shields. Now, I had to move all the weapon options onto another screen, and I'm not going to read all these weapon options because there's it's kind of confusing. But I guess like if we break it down here, and for every 5 models you have, you can have 2 power weapons with storm shields, or Astartes shields if you want to call them now. They're just a 4-up invult and save. You can have 2 Deathwatch Thunderhammers for every 5, and your Sergeant, which in this case I believe is called a Watch Sergeant, can have a combi weapon and a Xeno-phase blade. The Xeno-phase blade is essentially just a power weapon, but it's got dev wounds. If you did go up to the 10-man squad, then you would be taking 4 with power weapons and storm shields. You'll be taking 4 Deathwatch Thunderhammers, and the extra model, because you can't have 2 sergeants, would potentially have like Black Shield Blades, which is like a version of Lightning Claws, or you could take a Frag Cannon, which actually doesn't sound like the worst idea in the world. The Frag Cannon actually seems kind of interesting. So let's go back to why these guys could be interesting. Well, the reason they could be interesting really is the Deathwatch Thunderhammers, right? Those are Deathwatch Thunderhammers with strength 10 base, minus 2 AP, they've kept flat 3, and they have dev wounds. So, like, there is a lot to like about these Deathwatch Thunderhammers. They are going to do a lot of damage, you would think, and they only hit weapon skill 4 up. I guess anytime you're fighting any sort of Xenos, so basically not Imperium, not Chaos, you're going to be re-rolling all hits. So, Strength 10 is a break point, right? Like, enemy armor sometimes is toughness 10. Think of like Ballistus Dreadnoughts, toughness 10, Gladiator tanks, toughness 10. There is stuff that is toughness 10, and sometimes stuff is toughness 9 as well. Enemy transports. So if you wanted to open up a Rhino, for example, the Deathwatch Thunderhammer with Dev Wounds would actually be a really good weapon for this. So we can take 5 guys. That gives us 6 Thunderhammers, strength 10, AP 2, 3 damage, Dev Wounds. Okay, so that's what the squad can take. There's multiple different units that can lead the squad. The first is the Watchmaster. He's the most expensive at 105 points, but he can give that unit advance on charge and fall back on charge. And, I mean, he has... I mean, we could go, you know, I suppose I should just say is there is a few options here. Like, there is special heavy bolters, there is special combi weapons, there is stalker bolt rifles. So the shooting isn't bad, I guess, from this unit. And you can mix and match. You have a ton of customization on this unit. So you could possibly make a unit that can do a little bit of shooting and a little bit of combat. The only other unit we've really got like that is Company Heroes, but you only take them in squads of 4. So this is a way that we would have like a 10-man squad that has a bit of multi-purpose there. Right, so the Watchmaster, he has a Vigil Sphere, which is like a mastercrafted bolter, but the Spear has Lance by default, and it's strength 6 with 6 attacks. It's not too bad. If you have the Watchmaster, you can use a stratagem on them for 1 less CP, and advance and charge. And advance and charge is always kind of meaningful, especially if you've got a good melee unit that's potentially in a Rhino or something like that. So basically the Rhino advances in turn 1 and then is static in turn 2. In turn 2 you disembark, you move, you advance, you charge. It gives you quite a lot of threat range, especially with a pretty interesting melee unit. The one disadvantage of this Watchmaster is, unlike the Captain, which we're going to come to next, the Captain actually buffs their melee. This Watchmaster does nothing to buff the unit in terms of its melee. He just gives them advance and fall back, which is pretty useful most of the time, I would say. The other thing to say, his Rites of Battle is actually quite a bit weaker than like a Space Marine Captain's Rites of Battle, because you wouldn't have a detachment selected, so there's no way to use any of the Imperial Agent stratagems. So I think the only strat that this guy would give is basically he's going to give you the ability to do a free grenade every turn. I can't see anything else that he could do. They don't have the right keywords for any of the Space Marine stratagems, so I think it's just grenades. If I'm wrong there, please someone correct me in the comments, but I think that's what it is. Next up is Captain Artemis, and Artemis is interesting because he's going to give that whole unit lethal hits, and you are re-rolling a bunch of hits. So we know that lethal hits gets a lot of value if you are re-rolling hits, right? Because basically every time you miss, you potentially reroll into a 6, and that is another lethal hit. He also, if he dies, has a 2+ chance to come back to life with 1 wound. I mean, I think that's pretty quirky, but again, it could be useful. He has like a devastating wound anti-infantry flamer with D6 shots. It's not the worst weapon in the world, and he has a mastercrafted power sword. But I mean, the main reason to take Artemis, I think, is he's cheap, 65 points, and like I said, lethal hits will really synergize with a lot of re-rolling hits. It really helps to wound some of those higher toughness things you really struggle to wound on, because some of those re-rolls will be 6s. Now, we're going to put these guys inside a Rhino, probably, because it takes 12 Agents of the Imperium, so that would be your whole Deathwatch plus the 1 character leading them. A Rhino is toughness 9, 10 wounds, 3 up save. If it survives through 1 turn, in every command phase it's going to regain 1 wound. It's got a firing deck of 2, so there could be an argument there to have some decent weapon inside it. Like, one of the things inside it, like I said, is the Frag Cannon. I didn't touch too much on what the Frag Cannon is, but the Frag Cannon is actually kind of interesting in that it's like blast, rapid fire, D3 shots. Ballistic skill is only 4 up, but strength 7. AP 1, 2 damage, again, re-rolling all those hits potentially. So the one thing I do like about the Frag Cannon is, like, it's kind of an infantry killer, right? Like, strength 7 is good for wounding infantry, damage 2 is good against infantry, and for every 5 models, one model can have its bolt gun and power weapon replaced with a Frag Cannon. So you could have multiple Frag Cannons. Maybe if you're going to run the 10-man, you would want 2, and that actually gives you something of, like, a sneaky amount of firepower out of that Rhino. So we've got a couple of character choices, we've got a bunch of weapon choices. There's also a pretty interesting Inquisitor. Now, there's a few Inquisitors that can join the Deathwatch, but the one thing that I did like the idea about playing Draxus, and he is one of the more expensive ones at 95 points, he does have a psychic ability on a 2-up. Basically, you can make your unit untargetable by enemies if they're not within 18 inches. So it's kind of a bit like giving the unit like a bad version of Lone Operative, right? Lone Operative is 12 inches, this is 18 inches. He's actually going to add 1 to your hit roll as well with these guys. So while this model's in the unit, each time this model makes an attack that targets an enemy that does not have the Imperium or Chaos. So basically, like, at that point, you're hitting on 2s and re-rolling everything. And he can come in the transport as well. He has a Power Fist. Bear in mind it's only a Strength 6 Power Fist, but he has some Psychic again, anti-infantry, devastating wounds. So potentially, he can actually do quite a bit of, you know, up to 8 dev wounds, potentially into enemy infantry. That's probably why he's so expensive. But I think there's definitely a play around here again, and potentially, I guess, you've got grenades too. So, if you're getting any value out of the video so far, please consider liking. I am John, and I am here every week talking about how to improve your Blood Angels lists. So before we get into any serious maths, please consider subscribing and click the bell if you want weekly notifications about new 40k content coming out from my channel. So thanks so much for doing any of those things, and let's get on with the video. Alright, so the various combos we could run here are our Watchmaster for 105 points, 5 or 10 Deathwatch Veterans for 100 or 200, and a Rhino, making it 280 on the cheap end and 380 on the high end. I don't know if I feel like they are worth 380 points. They are just toughness 4 2-wound Marines. I mean, I guess you've got a Rhino in there, but that seems like an awful lot of points for the advance and charge. Especially Blood Angels have a strat for advance and charge. So as much as I like the fact that they are native advance and charge, I don't know if I like this squad. The squad I think I do like is the Lethal Hits Captain, Captain Artemis, probably with 5 Deathwatch Veterans and the Rhino. And that would come in at 240 points, which is much more reasonable. Lethal hits on everything, lots of rerolls to benefit from those lethal hits. The only disadvantage is if you start getting all those lethal hits, you do lose out on those devastating wounds from the Thunderhammers. So it's kind of a bit of a double-edged sword. While it would be good in some instances, it does have negative connotations in other instances. And then Draxus is going to give you that potential +1 to hit when you're fighting all those Xenoses. So if you are fighting Xenoses, then you've got everybody hitting on 2s and rerolling 1s, including Draxus. Potentially on a 2-up, so like 4 times out of 5. You couldn't be shot if you were within 18 inches. Again, 270 or 370 points. I think I would prefer the smaller unit, but I mean, maybe there's argument to have the 10-man unit. Bear in mind, in the 10-man unit, you can have 4 storm shields. So you could potentially wither a bit of firepower with an 18, and then everything else without 18 can't shoot you. So I think there is maybe a play with some of these Deathwatch. But let's jump into some math, right? And this is where I did like the 5-man squad. And bear in mind, like, I guess if you want to make a 10-man squad, you would just double the power weapons and double the Thunderhammers. And you would add potentially like another close combat weapon because you can't have 2 sergeants. But you can see here, even the sergeant with his like strength 5, AP 2, devastating wounds doesn't do that much damage. So it's really all coming down. If you know, like I went into toughness 6 and above. The power weapons are strength 5. And I think this is the sort of unit you'd probably be wanting to tussle, right? Like, it seems like it's a unit that's going to tussle. You want to get those Thunderhammers in to kill big, nasty things like transports, armigers, Land Raider equivalents, right? So this would these numbers are run with just re-rolling 1s. So assuming that you're like fighting Imperium or Chaos, these are the numbers. What can you do? Well, you can add the Watch Captain for advance and charge, which is nice. Sorry, the Watchmaster for advance and charge is nice. If you add that Watch Captain, you get lethals. Lethals will improve the overall damage here by about 20%. If you add Draxus, you will get +1 to hit against Xenos, which will also improve damage by about 20%. And if you get full rerolls to hit, which basically means you are fighting Xenos, you're not fighting Imperium or Chaos, your damage from some of these weapons will increase as much as 50%, because those Thunderhammers, like I said, they only hit on 4s, so we know that by rerolling all our hits, we can increase the damage by 50%. So if we had like the +1 to hit character, and we're fighting Xenos, then we're hitting on 3s, rerolling everything, so your damage can, like, there's ways where you can buff this unit up significantly. Now, it would be a lot of slides to work all this out, so I did do this maths, and these are ballpark numbers. There is some variance, but like +1 to hit is generally going to be a 20% damage increase. Lethals is going to be about 20%. Rerolls is going to be about 50%. Advancing charge is nice. Prevention being shot within 18 inches is also nice. So overall, I think like at 240 points for the Watch Captain, giving all this stuff, like the second you attach the Watch Captain, everything above here gets lethals. So lethals is going to increase all these damage numbers by 20%. So I guess like if you're fighting Impulsor, 20% more of them, plus 20% more of them. Yeah, like 1 round of combat, these guys are going to pop open a transport. Cool. They're going to do pretty close to killing a knight. What would this be like? 1.5, 1 and change, 20% more here, and then the captain. You know what? I should have just added them all up and then done 20% more. That would be the real clever. 5.8, 8.8, 9.8. So yeah, you do like 10.5 plus 20% more. Yeah, so statistically, these guys killed an Armiger in 1 turn. And an Armiger is a unit that are weak against, because if it was a Xenos unit with the equivalent of like T10, 3 up, 5 up, then you would be re-rolling all hits, so you do even more damage. So the unit itself, 65 points for the captain, 100 points, so 165 point unit that can kill an Armiger. It does have some incidental shooting that you would have. It could throw grenades. It's not the worst thing in the world, right? But how does it compare against Blood Angels at the moment, right? We know in Blood Angels we've got this finest hour captain who is disgusting and does an absolute ton of damage, that you can attach like a sustained 3 enhancement on him. Sure, you're only going to get finest hour once per game, but you're usually going to be able to do an alpha strike, right? These guys are in a transport, similar to, well, the Deathwatch are in the Rhino, the Blood Angels units are in the Impulsor. They're going to roll forward, they're going to jump out, they're going to make a charge. And if you use Oath of Moment, the base numbers for the finest hour captain are really quite impressive. Him himself is almost going to do 9 damage to an Impulsor. So if you've got the sustained 3 enhancement, he's definitely going to be probably killing an Impulsor. And typically people are attaching them to a unit of Assault Intercessors, which gives rerolls to wound, which would just buff all these numbers up again. And Assault Intercessors bring a good bit of damage as well. You know, like if you were going into the Impulsor, they're going to bring 6 damage to the table as well. So they are definitely killing an Impulsor. And like if you compare it to a Knight, they are definitely killing the Knight as well. Arguably, these guys are more reliably killing the Knight. But when I was doing this, I was sort of thinking to myself, everybody's doing this math, including like Oath of Moment, which these Assault Intercessors down here haven't got that included for them. But the captain is just so good with Oath of Moment. I was actually thinking, like, because the Blood Angels captain and the Space Marine captain are separate, there could actually be a situation here where you could just put 6 captains in an Impulsor. I think that's valid. That would actually be quite scary. I mean, that's messed up. I just think, because there's nothing that says each captain can't use finest hour. So you move the Impulsor forward in turn 1, 6 smash captains come out, they all use finest hour, one of them does the sustain 3 stuff. That's actually kind of scary, and captains do have an invulnerable save. I don't know. It sounds madness, but it's actually not as horrific as you see, because a finest hour captain, you know, like into an Impulsor, he does more damage than the 20 Assault Intercessors with the 4 Power Fist attacks. It's kind of silly. But yeah, he does get bonuses by being buffed together with those Assault Intercessors. So then I had to try to start putting some of my thoughts together in a conclusion, right? Because we've got like our lethal hits, Captain Artemis with the 5 Deathwatch veterans and the Deathwatch Rhino for 75 points. We've got 2 guys with a 4-up in vulnerable save. I'm not sure that feels impactful enough to allow the squad to survive. The AP2 across the squad and the Dev Wounds does make things a little spicy, right? But obviously you've got no invulnerable save on the Rhino. I think the squad is like an 8, maybe an 8.5 out of 10. I actually don't think it's too bad. I think it does basically the same thing as what Blood Angels are doing in the meta. And if we look at the points, the Captain, the Assault Intercessors, the Impulsor that we know is super beta for 235, plus 10 if you've got the points for the Rage Fueled Warrior, which just is really good, I guess. Comboed with Oath of the Moment, it's actually kind of crazy. And honestly, I just think this squad is maybe too good, right? Like, I think it's like a 9.10 or a 9 out of 10 if you've got Oath. If you're fighting on an objective so you can reroll all your wound rolls, then it's probably like a 9.5 out of 10. And if you have Rage Fueled Enhancement, then this squad is honestly like an 11 out of 10. Like, this one goes to 11. It's just that good. Now, I don't think this Deathwatch squad is bad. I just think what's meta for Blood Angels right now is just that good. There could be diminishing returns on this because you want to be using Oath of Moment on your target, right? Because Oath of Moment lets you fish for those rage-fueled attacks, and that's probably what's just making it so good. Bear in mind, this unit can also get Red Rampage. If you don't need it elsewhere in your army, you're going to be able to get it for free. And also you can use Armor of Contempt potentially for free, or grenades for free. I mean, I guess these Deathwatch guys up here do get grenades for free as well. It's not the worst thing in the world. But yeah, between the two squads, it's interesting to see the Devastating Wound Thunderhammers can spike. They can be interesting. But I don't know if they're exciting enough to give up the Blood Angels meta. I think if I was going to be playing this, I think I would be playing this Captain, Assault Intercessors, Impulsor, Rage Fueled, all that good stuff, the 11 out of 10 squad, and then I would have a second transport with the Deathwatch inside. And I think it is cool to make Deathwatch models. I bought the Deathwatch upgrade sprue to customize a bunch of my Blood Angels models because it makes sense. If you don't know the lore, then Blood Angels will go and join the Deathwatch for so many years, and then they'll come back to the chapter. Sometimes they have those Deathwatch pauldrons. There was one in the Warhammer Plus TV show that had been in the Deathwatch. I forget his name at this point, but he was there, and I guess there is more EP2 in this squad, and there is Devastating Wounds by default, right? This captain has the Devastating Wounds once per game, but I think the thing is that this squad is probably going to die. The second it charges out and does all that damage, it is then going to die. I don't know if 2 guys with a 4-up invulnerable save change all that. I mean, they might. And like I said, it's probably an 8.5 out of 10. So if you're fixated on wanting to run a squad of Deathwatch with your Blood Angels, I think Captain Artemis is the most interesting. I think you want the shields, you want the Thunderhammers. I guess where the Deathwatch are going to excel is if you're fighting against those Xenos and you're rerolling all these hits and you've got the lethal hits captain and AP2 is that, you know, all this stuff is AP2, so AP2 pushes them onto like their invulnerable save, then I think potentially you do more damage. And I guess you can take these in 10. Like, I don't actually really like 10 Assault Intercessors on foot. I think, you know, you don't get any more power fists, you just get more chainswords. The chainswords are fine, but I mean, I guess when you're paying 75 points for only like 3 damage into models, it's not really as exciting. So I guess like if you wanted to run 10 on foot, then maybe the Deathwatch actually are more interesting. And then if you're running 10 on foot, then you've got four guys with storm shields. And then you've got potentially that frag cannon in there. Maybe you could do some other interesting stuff. And I mean, the kill team are still 2 OC. So they are still good in terms of like the equivalent of like battle line, right? In terms of objective control. So I guess if you're looking for something with a little bit more durability that still can punch and don't need your Oath of Moment, then the Deathwatch Kill Team isn't the worst idea in the world. I kind of want to run one. I honestly do think it's an 8.5 out of 10. I just think if you're using these Blood Angels meta ones, they can be 11 out of 10. So I think that is it for this week's tactics video. Thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. If you didn't see the video last week, I covered 6 of the best Blood Angels lists in the current meta that are doing the best in tournament play, so you can see what people are running. So check that video out now, and if you want to support the channel, remember there is a link to Patreon in the video description. You can support the channel for as little as the price of a cup of coffee each month. Hopefully I'll see you in this next video over here somewhere. Thanks ever so much for watching. You guys have a great weekend. I've been John, the Blood Angels Commander. By the blood are we made strong, my friends.